Think of orchestrating the heist of the century from behind bars. Arthur Lee Cofield Jr., a gang leader in a Georgia prison, pulled off such a grand scheme. Let's discuss this mind-blowing story of deception, technology, and sheer audacity. Arthur Lee Cofield Jr.'s life took a dramatic turn when he found himself behind the cold bars of a Georgia prison. Serving a 14-year sentence for armed robbery, Cofield was not just any inmate. His story is one of cunning intelligence and daring ambition, a tale that seems more fitting for a Hollywood script than real life. In the confines of his cell, Cofield's mind was anything but imprisoned. He saw an opportunity in the one tool that could connect him to the outside world: contraband cell phones. These phones, smuggled into the prison through various means, became his gateway to a world of possibilities. While most inmates might use such devices for simple communication, Cofield had grander plans. His scheme was nothing short of audacious. Using these illegal phones, Cofield orchestrated what would become one of the most astonishing heists in history, all from the confines of his prison cell. He cleverly impersonated Sidney Kimmel, a billionaire, exploiting the wealthy man's identity to siphon off millions. This wasn't just a small-time operation. We're talking about an incredible 11 mil that Cofield redirected from Kimmel's accounts. The audacity of Cofield's plan is highlighted by his bold purchase, a lavish $4.4 million mansion in Atlanta. It's hard to fathom how an inmate under constant surveillance and limited freedoms could pull off such a feat. But how exactly did Cofield manage to impersonate a billionaire and redirect such a huge sum of money? And who were the accomplices that helped him in this daring heist from the outside? Sidney Kimmel, a name synonymous with immense wealth and success, found himself at the center of Arthur Lee Cofield Jr.'s audacious prison heist. Kimmel, a billionaire whose fortune was built on fashion and film, including hits like Crazy Rich Asians and Moneyball, became an unwitting target in Cofield's elaborate scheme. From the confines of his prison cell, Cofield zeroed in on Kimmel, a choice driven by the billionaire's substantial wealth. Kimmel, with a net worth of $1.5 billion, was the ideal target for this high-stakes financial fraud. The plan was daring and required meticulous execution, but Cofield was up to the task. Cofield's strategy involved an intricate impersonation of Kimmel. Using contraband cell phones, he gained access to Kimmel's personal and financial information. This was no small feat, as it involved manipulating various security measures to breach Kimmel's bank accounts. Cofield's impersonation was convincing enough to deceive bank officials, a fact that highlights both the sophistication of his plan and the vulnerabilities in the banking system. Once inside Kimmel's accounts, Cofield executed his plan with precision. He moved an astonishing $11 million out of Kimmel's account. This money was not just a figure on a screen, it was the key to a new world of luxury that Cofield would soon tap into. The boldness of Cofield's impersonation raises questions about how he managed to fool the banking system so effectively. It also sheds light on the sheer audacity of his plan. But what did Cofield do with this enormous sum of money? The answer lies in a stunning mansion in Atlanta, which stands as a symbol of this extraordinary heist. Having chosen his target, Cofield's plan was in motion. Up next, we will see the intricate web he wove to access Kimmel's fortune and set the stage for an unbelievable heist. Arthur Lee Cofield Jr.'s scheme to steal millions from a billionaire while locked up in a Georgia prison was a blend of modern technology and old-fashioned deception. The plan was to access and drain Sidney Kimmel's bank accounts. This required more than just a contraband cell phone, it needed a sharp mind and a network of outside help. The heart of Cofield's strategy was his impersonation of Kimmel. He used the smuggled cell phones to contact the bank, posing as the billionaire. Cofield had done his homework. He knew Kimmel's personal details like his social security number, mother's maiden name, date of birth, and home address. This information was key to convincing the bank that he was Kimmel. But how did Cofield get these details? This is where his outside accomplices came into play. They provided him with vital information and documents needed to authenticate his identity as Kimmel. This included Kimmel's driving license and utility bill. With this in hand, Cofield was able to pass through the bank's security checks. Once inside the bank accounts, Cofield's boldness came to the fore. He transferred a staggering $11 million from Kimmel's account. The amount was so large it's hard to imagine it going unnoticed, yet for a time, it did. The impersonation and the transfer were just the beginning. Cofield then used this money to fund his extravagant lifestyle, including the purchase of a multi-million-dollar mansion. With millions at his fingertips, Cofield's ambition knew no bounds. But how did he manage to carry out these transactions from behind bars? In one of the most audacious crimes ever orchestrated behind bars, Arthur Lee Cofield Jr. set his sights on a grand prize: a lavish $4.4 million mansion in Atlanta's upscale Buckhead neighborhood. This wasn't just any house, it was a symbol of luxury and opulence, a far cry from the confines of his prison cell. The process of purchasing the property was a masterclass in deception. Cofield, using his contraband cell phone, had already impersonated billionaire Sidney Kimmel to divert millions from his bank account. With this illicit wealth at his disposal, he began the process of acquiring the mansion. Executing the purchase required more than just money. It demanded a careful orchestration of moves to avoid detection. Cofield, still incarcerated, relied heavily on his accomplices on the outside. They were his eyes and ears in the free world, facilitating the transaction on his behalf. This involved negotiating the deal, handling the paperwork, and most importantly, making the payments. In an extraordinary display of audacity, part of the payment for the mansion was made in cash, a staggering $720,000 handed over in person by Cofield's associates. This bold move was part of a larger payment totaling $3.7 million to secure the property. It's almost unthinkable that such a transaction could be conducted on behalf of someone who was not only absent but imprisoned. The mansion itself, with 6 bedrooms and situated in one of the most prestigious areas of Atlanta, stood as a testament to Cofield's daring and cunning. Yet it also represented a blatant disregard for the law and the norms of society. Cofield's mansion purchase was just a piece of the puzzle. Now let's meet the key players who helped turn his audacious dreams into reality. Eldridge and Lee Bennett. At the heart of Arthur Lee Cofield Jr.'s elaborate scheme were 2 key accomplices, Eldridge and Lee Bennett. Their involvement was crucial in making the audacious mansion purchase a reality. Eldridge Bennett, a 65-year-old man, played a pivotal role in the physical aspects of the heist. He was the one who physically handled the large sums of cash required for the mansion's down payment. His actions were not just about delivering money, they were about maintaining a facade of legitimacy in a deal that was anything but. Lee Bennett, Eldridge's 27-year-old daughter, was also deeply involved. She was instrumental in the negotiations and transactions that led to the mansion's purchase. Her role went beyond just being an accomplice. She was an active participant in the scheme, helping to orchestrate the purchase of the $4.4 million property in Atlanta's Buckhead area. The process was intricate. In July 2020, Eldridge and Lee found the luxurious 6-bedroom house and began the negotiations. They offered the homeowner $4.4 million for the property. Approximately $720,000 was provided in cash as a down payment. On September 1, 2020, Eldridge Bennett handed over the remaining $3.7 million in cash to complete the purchase. Their actions, however, did not go unnoticed. Federal authorities were quick to catch on to the unusual nature of the transaction. Both Eldridge and Lee Bennett had pleaded not guilty to charges of conspiracy to commit bank fraud and money laundering. Their involvement in this scheme shows the lengths to which Cofield's associates were willing to go to execute his plans. The Bennetts played their part, but all schemes have an end. Now let's explore how law enforcement caught up to this complex plot, leading to the dramatic arrest of Cofield and his crew. Arthur Lee Cofield Jr.'s grand scheme of fraud and deception eventually came crashing down, thanks to the vigilant efforts of law enforcement. The discovery and subsequent arrest of Cofield and his accomplices marked the end of one of the most daring heists orchestrated from prison. The unraveling of Cofield's scheme began with financial institutions noticing irregular activities involving large sums of money. Banks and brokerage firms like Charles Schwab detected unauthorized transactions involving millions of dollars. These financial institutions, upon realizing the fraud, alerted federal authorities, setting the wheels of justice in motion. Investigators traced the source of these fraudulent activities and discovered a surprising and unusual culprit, a prisoner orchestrating the whole operation using contraband cell phones. They uncovered the complex web of deceit Cofield had woven, involving impersonating billionaire Sidney Kimmel and transferring large sums of money from his accounts. Cofield's strategy was sophisticated, but no plan is foolproof. The digital footprints he left and the physical evidence gathered from his accomplices provided law enforcement with the necessary leads. Authorities discovered the involvement of Eldridge and Elia Bennett in the scheme, particularly their role in the purchase of the $4.4 million mansion in Atlanta. The arrests were a dramatic culmination of meticulous investigative work. Cofield, already in prison, faced additional charges, while his accomplices, including the Bennetts, were apprehended for their roles in the fraud. The charges were serious: conspiracy to commit bank fraud and money laundering, reflecting the severity of their crimes. With Cofield and his accomplices caught, the courtroom drama unfolds. How did this case impact the prison system's handling of contraband and the banking industry's security measures? The legal proceedings for Arthur Lee Cofield Jr. and his accomplices unfolded with a series of court appearances and plea deals that highlighted the complexity of their criminal undertaking. Cofield, already serving time, faced additional serious charges, while his accomplices, including Eldridge and Elia Bennett, confronted the legal consequences of their involvement in the scheme. In court, the evidence against Cofield and his team was overwhelming. The prosecution presented a detailed account of their activities, from the impersonation of billionaire Sidney Kimmel to the sophisticated laundering of millions through the purchase of a luxurious Atlanta mansion. The case was a stark example of the innovative ways that criminal activities can be conducted, even from the constraints of prison. Cofield, recognizing the strength of the evidence against him, opted to plead guilty. His plea was a strategic move to potentially lessen his sentence, but also an admission of the extent of his criminal activities. His guilty plea covered charges of conspiracy to commit bank fraud and aggravated identity theft, showcasing the severity of his actions. The Bennetts, key players in the real estate transaction, also faced the court's scrutiny. Their defense was centered around their roles in the scheme, but the evidence presented by the prosecution painted a clear picture of their complicity. The plea deals in court proceedings were not just a formality, they were a crucial step in delivering justice. They served to hold Cofield and his accomplices accountable for their actions and to send a message about the consequences of such elaborate criminal enterprises. As the legal saga of Cofield and his team came to a close, one question lingered. What impact did this case have on the prison system's management of contraband and on financial institutions' security protocols? Let's see the ripple effects of Cofield's actions, from the victims to the prison system's overhaul. In the aftermath of Arthur Lee Cofield Jr.'s audacious heist, there was a significant fallout that affected not only the victims, but also the prison system. The impact of his actions rippled through various sectors, prompting introspection and change. For the victims, particularly billionaire Sidney Kimmel and others whose identities were compromised, the heist was more than a financial loss. It was a breach of privacy and security. The theft of millions of dollars undoubtedly caused distress and inconvenience. However, in cases like Kimmel's, the financial institutions involved often have insurance and reimbursement policies that mitigate the direct financial impact on individuals. Yet the psychological and reputational damage of such an incident cannot be overstated. The prison system faced its own set of challenges in the fallout. Cofield's ability to orchestrate such a complex scheme from behind bars raised serious questions about the management of contraband within the prison walls. It highlighted the need for stricter controls and advanced detection methods to prevent the smuggling of mobile phones and other illegal items into prisons. This incident likely led to a review of security protocols and possibly prompted the implementation of more stringent measures to curb similar activities in the future. Moreover, the case underscored the importance of surveillance and monitoring of inmates, especially those with a history of sophisticated criminal behavior. It brought to light the necessity for prison administrations to stay ahead of the technological curve to prevent inmates from exploiting vulnerabilities in the system. Cofield's heist and its aftermath serve as a powerful reminder of the consequences of criminal ingenuity and the continuous need for vigilance in both financial and correctional institutions. The aftermath of Cofield's heist had far-reaching impacts. But what about the man himself? Next, we explore Cofield's growing notoriety and the legacy of his daring escapade. Arthur Lee Cofield Jr.'s heist captured public and media attention, sparking widespread fascination and disbelief. The story, resembling a plot straight out of a Hollywood thriller, made headlines, with people marveling at how an inmate could pull off such a grand scheme from within the confines of a prison. Cofield's audacious heist not only demonstrated his cunning and resourcefulness, but also highlighted significant gaps in prison security and financial institution safeguards against identity theft. Media coverage often focused on the shock factor of the crime, emphasizing Cofield's boldness and the sheer scale of the heist. In prison, Cofield's notoriety grew exponentially. His ability to orchestrate such a sophisticated operation while incarcerated turned him into a sort of infamous figure. He was viewed by many as a mastermind who challenged and outsmarted the system. His influence extended beyond the prison walls, as his story became a topic of conversation and analysis in various circles. However, Cofield's legacy is a complex one. While some may view him as a kind of anti-hero or a symbol of defiance against the system, his actions had real victims and serious legal consequences. His story is a cautionary tale about the extents to which criminal ingenuity can go, and the importance of vigilance in preventing such schemes. As we move to the end of the story, let's reflect on the broader implications of Cofield's actions. What does this case tell us about crime, punishment, and the possibility of redemption? Arthur Lee Cofield Jr.'s heist not only made headlines for its audacity, but also raised critical questions about security in financial institutions and prisons. This case has forced a re-examination of the systems in place to prevent such occurrences, both in the banking sector and within the correctional system. Financial institutions have been prompted to scrutinize their security measures, especially concerning identity verification processes. The ease with which Cofield impersonated a billionaire and accessed large sums of money highlighted significant vulnerabilities. Banks and brokerage firms are now likely more vigilant in monitoring transactions, particularly those involving substantial amounts and unusual patterns. This incident has underscored the need for more robust safeguards against identity theft and fraud. In the prison system, Cofield's ability to carry out such a complex operation while incarcerated brought to light the issue of contraband, particularly cell phones. It's a stark reminder of the ongoing battle against illegal items within prisons and the need for more effective strategies to combat the issue. Prisons are likely re-evaluating their security protocols and looking for new technologies to prevent contraband smuggling. Beyond the immediate security implications, Cofield's heist also poses broader societal and ethical questions. It challenges us to think about the nature of crime and punishment, the potential for criminal ingenuity, and the balance between security and personal freedoms. His actions, while illegal and harmful, also reflect a certain level of intelligence and resourcefulness that, if applied differently, could have had positive outcomes. As we conclude this remarkable story, we're left to ponder the complex interplay of law, ethics, and human ingenuity. Arthur Lee Cofield Jr.'s case is more than just a tale of crime. It's a reflection of the challenges and vulnerabilities inherent in our modern systems. Arthur Lee Cofield Jr.'s saga represents a unique intersection of cunning and deceit, proving that even prison walls can't always contain criminal ambition. His story urges us to reevaluate our systems of security and justice. Don't skip the different kind of criminal cunning in our next video about the family that lived from stealing winning lottery tickets, revealing how some exploit fortune for their gain.